With a mixture of interest and disdain, the commanders on board an extraterrestrial cruiser circled the world below. Members laughed at what they described as human-made rudimentary camouflage while reviewing Earth's defenses, forces who had witnessed everything in their green uniforms and galactic conquests. In contrast to their advanced cloaking technology, paint attempts to blend into deserts and woodlands seemed to one of the commanders turned on his visual scanner and zoomed in, a ridiculously simple move. He smiled smugly in his conviction that any life might exist in a deep, dark forest where human energies were said to be active. He believed that these human sticks and stones would make it simple to identify them from hiding below. They were able to see and interpret biosigns using their sensors and thermal imaging. They find anything alive in a matter of seconds they thought the aliens would be unable to hide from them. Their ship was cloaked and ready to launch a squad eager to catch a live specimen to study Earth's basic camouflage. It descends farther to drop off a small scouting squad that is armed with drones and energy weapons in the surrounding air. Glistened as the cloaking field came into effect, making the team invisible to anyone on the ground. A lone guy was waiting somewhere below. He was a Navy SEAL, and deep within his element his face is hidden by natural streaks, and he wears layers of mud. Earth that mingled with the shadows created by the dense canopy above each. He recognized every breeze and could feel the aliens' presence. The slight hum of their cloaking equipment and the smell of metallic compounds before he ever saw them were not as they patiently pondered. He hid himself among dense bushes and observed their motions, noticing the shimmering. A silent sneer appeared on his face as the alien squad moved, causing distortion in the air. They might have been invisible. He waited as they stood out to him like neon signs to the inexperienced eye. The SEAL remained still while the extraterrestrials spread out in a sweeping pattern, using their advanced technology to survey the land. He knew better than to interact with them directly, so he observed them, soaking in all. He described in detail how they traveled, their scanning patterns, and the gaps in their formation. Based on his experience, he concluded that assumed they were the hunters and were overconfident, not realizing he had the alien squad commander, who had already started to reverse the situation, gestured to his crew to increase their search intensity. They started scanning the region with lasers that silently and precisely sliced through the air in lines, and the SEAL was changed. In order to evade discovery, he was positioned somewhat deeper in the muck, so motionless that he blended in with the surroundings, appearing to the SEAL as just another shadow among many. The aliens' Achilles' heel was how much they depended on their technology, believing it would accomplish the laborious tasks for them. He was aware that this gave him the advantage, even if they couldn't see what their scanners weren't able to detect. Since he remained out of their reach, he was able to freely study them because one of their characteristics was camouflage. Technology, but for him it was a talent developed over years of practice and self-control. Minutes seemed to drag into tens. And the SEAL remained motionless. The aliens became agitated, and their commander clearly irritated. He gave commands in a language the SEAL couldn't comprehend. But he didn't have to. The squad's confidence was waning, and their patience was wearing thin, as evidenced by their body language. An easy capture, but they ended up empty-handed, with their invisible prey constantly eluding them. Suddenly, one of the aliens approached the SEAL's location, and he aimed his humming scanner closer to the SEAL's position on the ground. Stayed motionless, his respiration shallow, his pulse constant, and he was concealed by his composure protected him from more than just the mud the alien only paused a few of. Feet away, the alien was frustrated by his scanner's flickering inability to detect anything other than the slight warmth of the soil. The SEAL suppressed a smile as he mumbled to himself and adjusted his equipment. The defenders of this planet were defenseless and out of date in the perspective of aliens. However, at this moment, the alien turned away, unwilling to see the SEAL, who knew who was actually in charge. As the alien squad gathered, a silent, invisible entity that could have instantly killed him took mental notes of their gear and actions showed that they were leaving themselves exposed and defenseless since they were unsure of how to look beyond the technology they valued so highly. They had undervalued this planet and these people. And most dangerously, the Navy SEAL kept his body in sync with aliens' whispers buzzed softly in the air with each vibration and change. He could now see the pattern since he was close enough to hear their incomprehensible directives mingling with the sound of scanners. They used precise, well-calculated maneuvers in their search formation, which were directed by the measurements from their advanced machinery, but their approach to the SEAL saw was rigid and slow. He saw it as a vulnerability that he planned to take advantage of by remaining low and moving into position, His motions were deliberate and light, and he blended in with the surrounding natural sounds. Given the surroundings, every move was designed to keep him completely concealed. His objective was observation rather than conflict. Essential to comprehend their methods, routines, communication, and areas of weakness and patience was his ally, and he expertly used it. The aliens then carried on searching, using light to sweep the area. With sensors that tried to trace each crack, their actions were methodical, created with efficiency in mind. Yet the SEAL recognized that efficiency was no match for adaptability. The forest was a complicated environment with erratic sounds, sudden changes, and shifting shadows. The aliens had no expertise with such terrain and were unable to forecast these factors due to the wind. Were taught to believe their gadgets, which merely displayed statistics and patterns rather than the nuanced clues of a well-camouflaged enemy. He saw one of the extraterrestrials drift away from the others, possibly in response to a sensor. The SEAL took advantage of an alarm or an odd reading and moved stealthily. His thoughts raced as he moved into a position where he could observe the squad's formation covertly, calculating distances and angles, assessing each alien's position, and determining when they were moving. He had to. The alien advanced slowly, sweeping his hand to keep total control over the encounter. Unaware that the SEAL was only a few meters away, the scanner moved back and forth, seamlessly blending with the surroundings. The SEAL counted his breaths and felt the beat of the moment. When the alien commander yelled for the scout to return to the group, the alien paused, as if he was hesitant. The SEAL then acted with quick, exact, and precise action before turning around. Without making a sound, he neutralized the alien by closing the distance. Before the other members of the team could notice, he disappeared back into the shadows, leaving no trace. The squad then proceeded with the woodland remained deserted, as they searched without realizing they were missing one person. And harmless. Their apparatus was still registering nothing out of the ordinary that the SEAL possessed. Left no trace of his presence or the events that had just transpired. Slowly, the team started to feel uneasy about the alien commander. Looked tensely over his body and mumbled a few words that were obviously annoyed. Even though they were still certain of their goal, the SEAL could tell that they were starting to sense the quiet and the crushing weight of an adversary they were unable to see or comprehend. The SEAL took advantage of this. Switching to a different role and arranging his next point of contact. Made no sound, leaving behind the smallest alterations in the undergrowth that might be confused for each animal movement, was planned to sustain the psychological strain he had started to create. With each minute that went by without a definite sign, the aliens' displeasure and confidence were growing more and more apparent. Of their target, while observing the SEAL's ability to observe the alien commander modify his equipment, telling the team to tighten their formation because they felt vulnerable and exposed, and their gunfire reverberated through the trees into the shadows, but they concealed nothing. Their stress increased with each failed attempt as they became more aware that they might not be as invincible as I thought. That the SEAL exploited every pause and uncertainty into their thoughts. He knew he had the upper hand because his plan was as much about endurance as it was about action. The setting was his ally, and the extraterrestrial squad was only an uninvited visitor. The SEAL observed them intently, evaluating their understanding of a world they could not comprehend. As the squad drew nearer to the SEALs, they saw how each unsuccessful search made them feel more worried. Changed his strategy, guiding them in loops while utilizing natural cover to conceal his movements, giving them the impression that they were encircled by an unknown menace. The atmosphere became tight and heavy with uncertainty as the team discovered that their superior technology wasn't enabling them to see their scanners and, once their greatest assets, sensors now appear to be more limiting distractions. Instead of improving their image, the SEAL's activities were relentless. He could see the terror starting to creep in subtly at first, but the maneuver was designed to emphasize the aliens' confusion. It was obvious that their once accurate movements had become wobbly, with each alien looking over his shoulder, as though anticipating something to surface from the shadows. The SEAL realized he had managed to alter the dynamic, so they no longer felt as though they were being hunted. And with every second that went by, the SEAL kept up his psychological grip, driving the surrounding forest's alien inhabitants deeper into a state of bewilderment and fear. They had come here hoping to apprehend a primitive, but they stayed motionless, silent witnesses to their increasing desperation. Life form, but they were now confined to a game they didn't comprehend and up against an invisible opponent or anticipate that the SEAL's plan would succeed flawlessly. But he had destroyed their trust and deprived them of their by challenging their presumptions and demonstrating the limitations of their technology. The aliens were starting to realize that Earth was. They couldn't easily take it over because its defenders weren't so archaic after all, and in this survival game the alien squad reorganized, putting them at a disadvantage, and their confidence was clearly rattled. They adjusted their scanning gadgets to magnify the commands the commander yelled, his voice filled with annoyance. They set their infrared vision to maximum sensitivity and requested aerial assistance, sending off tiny surveillance drones that flew in close formation. Searching the entire area for any indication of it was evident that the elusive target had changed their strategy after realizing they were up against a formidable foe. The SEAL watched them intently, reading every change, so this wasn't the easy hunt they had anticipated. Analyzing each new piece of equipment they used, the drones hummed steadily as they stretched out among the trees. The SEAL stayed motionless, allowing the drones to fly past while they analyzed every shadow and movement with dim red rays. Without responding, he understood their limitations completely and knew how to take advantage of them. The aliens started using planned routes constrained by the same technological blind spots they relied on. Ground-penetrating radar and thermal sensors are trying to look for any indications of heat or erratic movement. The SEAL modified his approach to accommodate their new technology by further integrating himself with he proceeded through the area very slowly, avoiding any needless movements that would have allowed the heat signature of the Earth to conceal his existence because he was aware that they anticipated people to panic or run away from advanced. He conducted surveillance while remaining still, enabling his training to take precedence. The alien commander attentively monitored the sensors in anticipation of catching at least a glimpse of any instinct for quick movement. There was a glimmer of movement and a heat signature, but the SEAL's patience made their tools ineffective. Were noticeably upset and kept changing places as they tried to keep their formation and balance their dependency on technology and their incapacity to adjust to this harsh environment. The SEAL is aware of their mentality kept the psychological strain going. And the drones started deploying a secondary wave of sensors were recalibrated to detect minute vibrations and weak biological signals. Height. Attempting to flush him out of the SEAL by establishing a low-flying perimeter, he exploited his environment to anticipate this maneuver, diving under natural cover that further warped the drones were able to detect life in their surroundings. But they were picking up everything from tiny animals to leaves, generating an uncontrollable volume of signals that overloaded their processing tools. SEAL's knowledge of the terrain, and because he was invisible, wildlife permitted him to utilize it as a shield, allowing the drones to pick up false signals. The alien squad was now clearly rattling and huddled closer together inside their range. SEAL saw how their formation became more rigid, and he realized that they were growing more protective and anxious. The alien soldiers were looking about with a deliberate precision that had begun to show flaws. Noticeable discomfort that their technology, which they had depended on to lead them, had not worked, not produce any outcomes, and this setback was starting to lower their spirits. They had anticipated immediate success. But now their focus was divided between searching and defending against an invisible threat, the SEAL, because they were working on uncharted territory. Moved with a fresh sense of purpose, evaluating how he could take advantage of their fear of his focus, he took notice of each Devic's limitations and focused on the little cracks in their creation that showed their increasing weakness. Remembering patterns and searching for blind spots produced by its sophisticated yet inflexible machinery they used merely served to confirm his perception of their excessive dependence on technology rather than their innate flexibility, or he was aware that they would keep pushing for a technology answer in an effort to outscan our map and outweigh the danger, rather than adjusting to a world they didn't fully comprehend as they proceeded during their quest. The SEAL started to leave behind deceptive clues and little disturbances that would appear on their scanners without really disclosing where he was. He went quietly to establish up their findings were thrown off by misleading indicators, which caused them to doubt every signal in the surrounding forest. Sensory overload as a result of their equipment detecting multiple false positives, each of which increases their level of frustration. As the alien commander became increasingly irate, he gave the order to switch TCTI SACE, and they tried a last recalibration, boosting their drone sensitivity to find even the smallest signs of electromagnetic activity. They thought that this new modification would enable them to focus on the weapons or equipment of their targets. But the SEAL had already secured his equipment to reduce his electronic signature because he had foreseen this strategy. To pursue fictitious leads, sending out enough sporadic signals to keep them going without ever disclosing his identity. The aliens tried a fresh strategy by deploying a batch of specialist drones because their usual equipment wasn't sufficient. Outfitted with reflected beams that could reveal concealed things by upsetting nearby particles. In response, the SEAL moved to a dense area of the forest where there was a lot of cover and shadows mixed with reflective technology. Finds it challenging to differentiate his shape from the natural environment due to the presence of roots and rocks. Surroundings. The new equipment didn't work, which made the alien troop even more frustrated and exhausted. Levels were clearly declining, and each squad member was moving more slowly. They had anticipated a brief involvement due to the constant mental and physical toll, but they were dragged into an exhausting game in which all of their efforts resulted in nothing but uncertainty, while the SEAL, aware of their weariness, stayed as sharp as he had been from the start, allowing their annoyance to grow as they put effort into each futile upon observing the fatigue on his soldiers' expressions. The extraterrestrial commander made in his last effort to recover command, he drew them into a tighter grip and told them to retreat and regroup. Perimeter with the goal of using their integrated sensors to more precisely scan a confined area and SEAL as they put energy into yet another scan. They read their intents and withdrew out of the scan's range beforehand. Strategy that would ultimately fail their technology, even while advanced could not make up for it because the squad's lack of instincts allowed them to continue searching the SEAL without being discovered, utilizing the alien commander, using technology as his shield. Started to realize that their pride in their technology was also their weakness, but he was unable to let it go and kept giving orders. Attempting one system after another and refusing to acknowledge that his gadgets had malfunctioned, the SEAL was seen doing calculations. Realizing that each strategy they employed brought them one step closer to failure, and the knowledge that they were the alien squad had regrouped stress, making them less invincible than they had thought. Growing as they adjusted their formation to what they now perceived to be a significant danger, in order to deploy all of their remaining resources, the commander gave orders to their communication devices in a sharp layer. As they got ready for an exhaustive search, they adjusted the scanners to their highest sensitivity and made their tech worrisome louder. Motion sensors, infrared, electric, and electromagnetic detectors, and sonic pulses, all of which are intended to reveal the behind their advanced equipment, a covert enemy who had been one step ahead of them, but there was a clear feeling of as desperation spread, the Navy SEALs remained invisible and uncompromising. Manage his position covertly, observing the aliens' movements and taking note of the increased vigor in their movements and the increasing disorder in their behaviors. He realized that their self-assurance had switched to survival mode, focusing only on finding and destroying the threat, not on capturing it. His deliberate application of pressure caused their approach to change, causing them to lose their composure with each other. In a daring last maneuver, the aliens unleashed their best drones, equipped with armed. They believed that this technology, with its powerful focus beams, had scanning potential. The drones hovered above, their sensors scanning with nearly surgical precision, forcing the SEAL out into the open. Carefully slicing through each shadow in an effort to break through any cover other than the SEAL had already positioned himself in a location with a lot of natural obstacles in order to prepare for this technique. The drone's beams passed over his position, unable to reach him because they knew their energy would fade before it did. Pierced the ground as deeply as they hoped, but each time they tried to get inside his hiding place, they were unsuccessful. The alien commander's voice crackled with stress, a rare indication of his presence, leaving them blind once more. Strain that even his own men could hear, he yelled additional orders, ordering his troops to move forward in closer formation, directing each member of the squad to cover every possible angle he was, pursuing every possibility in order to reveal the unseen opponent. Even if it means dividing his forces into weaker confined areas, this choice simply made them weaker by limiting the range that each alien could cover. Restricted space, transforming their own structure into a trap, and the SEAL noticed the timing his subsequent actions with precision were all based on patience. Using deliberate caution, he let the team take up their defensive position and monitored their moves while he walked silently and in harmony with the environment, keeping just beyond of their radar range. Even though their TTology was remarkable, they had unintentionally built it by slipping between the cracks. What it could see, and the extraterrestrial squad had vanished from their sensors as completely as the shadows themselves. Now completely dependent on their commander's orders, obeying his commands in a final attempt to manage the circumstance, they moved in a preset pattern, concentrating on one region at a time, assuming any threat that dared approach would be exposed by their combined firepower. But the SEAL's movements remained measured and, knowing that every unsuccessful sweep abandoned them, he let them waste their energies without being noticed. Increasingly vulnerable and unsure, recognizing the weariness of his soldiers, the alien as a last resort, the commander gave them instructions to focus their weapons on a suspected point in the hopes that they position themselves in a close perimeter with the goal of forcing the seal into a visible escape with a focused attack. Everything they possessed in the hopes of seeing any movement in that one spot. But the seal again awaited their strategy. He moved right before the explosion radius, causing them to spend their resources on a vacant plot of land, a strategic error that severely depleted their energy stores. The alien troops, who were now obviously worn out, started to fail as their commander's confidence began to wane. His voice was strained as he repeated directions in an attempt to regain control, but the seal could see that his directives had become frantic. The fissures creating the eroding unity within their ranks. He realized that this morale collapse was as powerful a weapon as any physical attack. His plan had turned their self-assurance into anarchy with every missed attempt to weaken their unity by breaching their boundary and wearing out their technology. The aliens discovered the seal approached, putting them at a disadvantage in the very setting they had misjudged. Unseen in the dim light, evaluating their waning vitality and tense nerves, he stripped them of their presumptions, leaving them as a group clinging to what little hope they had left of success. Their technology, which had previously provided them with an advantage, was now a liability. The alien lost the game they thought they had mastered the instant they started extracting energy without any results. When the commander saw that his squad's determination had finally crumbled, he decided to leave and issued an order for commanding his troops to reassemble and cease the search, but the SEAL's command of the situation had not, even though he was not seen to the alien squad. His presence was sensed. Proud and ready, they now withdrew under the burden of a conflict they had never completely comprehended, bringing with them the recognition that, as the final member of the alien squad, their technology, strategies, and self-assurance had failed them. Moved out, defeated, and the SEAL remained still, allowing them to vanish. An opponent shattered their dignity into the night, and they never saw the forest again. Went back to silence, his goal accomplished without firing a shot. The alien squad quickly withdrew, leaving the woodland undisturbed, and the Navy SEAL completed his objective. He took a deep breath, fully aware that any moment of victory could also offer a final struggle. Replaying the tactics he used and the reactions they elicited, his mind processed every aspect of the meeting. Every move had been an exercise in endurance, skill, and the capacity to manipulate not only the enemy's perspective, but also their actual. He had used their reliance on his sense of self-assurance to work both inside their heads and inside the forest. As he was ready to depart, he paused to consider how technology was working against them and revealing the boundaries of their comprehension. Examine the area one last time to be sure that no traces remain. Of his existence was eliminated. No footprints or indications of a human presence remained. Disruption, his familiarity with the terrain enabled him to travel as if he had never been there before. Discipline was a tactic that went beyond the purpose by leaving no trace behind. It was more than just a habit. Made certain that his acts would remain a mystery, a secret power that Earth had waiting for anyone who dared to test it. As he started to quietly make his way back to the extraction point, his senses were on high alert for any final signs of pursuit. The aliens had retreated, but he was still wary since he knew that this could be a calculated move to entice him into complacency. Each action was carefully planned to prevent any kind of detection or leaving a discernible trail. His strategy was based on respect for the difficulty of his work and an understanding of even the best-run businesses can have hidden risks. So his mission was about more than that. Rather than survival, it demonstrated fortitude and the ability to use tactical mastery to defeat even the most sophisticated opponents as he went. Thinking back on the conflict and realizing that his triumph did not come from defeating them, but they believed they were better than him because he understood them, anticipated their shortcomings, and took advantage of them. Coming to Earth with the attitude of conquerors, yet their own arrogance had prevented them from seeing the nuances that would prove to be their downfall. The SEAL's triumph served as a reminder that human adaptation was a human patience, accuracy. An intuitive understanding of the world could surpass technology. Although they may never fully understand it, his presence has permanently altered the alien squad's environment. The character of their defeat was woven into the quiet, a feature of the environment in which they had failed. To control every one of their unsuccessful strategies, every instance of annoyance had been ingrained in their thoughts as proof of their susceptibility on a world they had misjudged. Their view of Earth had changed as a result of the SEAL's ways. And it would return with their perception of the galaxy's basic life forms, which the SEAL was aware of measures went beyond a single run-in, the extraterrestrial leaders now identified by their unsuccessful assault would back with tales that raised questions they couldn't readily dispel. They had come to Earth in search of power, possibly even conquest, but each alien that took part would depart knowing their own limitations. Bring back the memories of an invisible foe who had eluded them, outwitting their most sophisticated defenses and their aspirations with only a natural world mastery. His mission signified not only protection but a silent warning that would probably reach the top echelons of their command system on Earth, but it wasn't an easy target, no straightforward conquest, but a location where even one agent could thwart the aliens, possessing superior technology. Had no knowledge of human weapons or Earth's secrets. Defenses, the only thing they had learned was humility, and it was imparted without the use of any cutting-edge technology. Instead, the SEAL arrived at his destination by using patience, accuracy, and the land itself. Extraction point. Each motion was in time with his surroundings, leaving no trace of his presence while he waited and considered the results of his actions. Had not only ensured Earth's security for the time being, but also established a precedent that alien technology had not produced any. The SEAL has sufficient knowledge of humanity to be aware of a powerful unseen defender. That occasionally the shadow cast by the unspoken message was the most potent one. Over their understanding of Earth, suggesting hidden advantages in the quiet that felt a sense of peaceful fulfillment after following the SEAL, knowing that his mission had unfolded as planned. A series of measured each step is intended to protect without revealing too much. So the aliens would only have questions when they left. In a technologically driven environment where they were unable to confirm assumptions. They had come across a defender who didn't utilize any of it and whose only weapon was the capacity to adapt in order to comprehend the terrain, because they couldn't. His achievement served as a message and a representation of Earth's potential in addition to being personal. Although the aliens could return in the future, the SEAL was prepared to resist any force that misjudged it. They would proceed cautiously, realizing that dominance was not assured by their technological advantage. They would relive this encounter and even question their capacity to defeat a world with. When the extraction vehicle's approach signaled the end of his mission, defenders like him taking one last look at the surroundings. He departed the area where he had found strength and cover. The aliens would not take anything from a silent ally who was unaffected and working on his mission. Beyond their recollections, this experience served as a chilling reminder of the mysterious force they had encountered. As he left, the SEAL felt the weight of what he had done, which was beyond their comprehension. That Earth was not helpless, and that its protectors were aware of both the complex art of survival and fighting. His actions pointed to a deeper strength, even if he had not yet revealed anything. Resiliency ingrained in each stone, shadow, and blade of grass that they had neglected to check before his job was over. Left knowing that Earth is safe, and that its secrets are unbroken. The aliens' defeat was carried with them a silent triumph interwoven with the stillness of the territory he had defended.